Hey, everybody, this is Craig Garber. Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar from New York via Nashville. We're with the one and only Dan Knobler today. A couple of quick announcements. Number one, Joe Pisapia, our mutual friend. I want to thank you for connecting us. He's one of the nicest guys I had on this show, man. Very sweet guy. And second, make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com/subscribe, and you can subscribe to the audio podcast and the YouTube video. And forgive my cold and my flu. I'm like 80% through it, and you'll have to look at me today, which probably ain't good. Anyway, let's talk about Dan Knobler. He's a producer, recording engineer, mixer, and guitarist. Again, out of Nashville. He runs Goosehead Palace, which is his recording studio in Nashville. He's produced and engineered products for Lake Street Drive, Rodney Crowell, who's like down here right now, I think.
Yeah, he's about to go on that Kayamu cruise. He was here this morning, but he goes to Florida, I think, maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, because I was driving home. I was driving home from St. Pete to pick up that guitar there from my luthier, and I saw a sign, Rodney Crowell, and I knew I had you coming on. I said, oh, that's, so bing, bing.
Nice.
And he's coming down here like this week or something.
Yeah.
Kelsey Walden, Cory Chisel, and I'm going to mess this up, Adriel Denae.
Yeah, you got it.
And the Stray Birds and others. As a co-founder of Mason Jar Music in Brooklyn, he worked for several years creating audio and video content for a wide range of artists and clients, including Feist. Did you ever work with Teddy Kumpel?
I don't think so.
Because he played with her. Big Thief, Chris Thiele, and Edgar Meyer. Talented. Talk about talent. The Wood Brothers, Bela Fleck and Abigail Washburn, the Food Network, and others. In 2012, Mason Jar Music was named one of the most innovative music companies by Fast Company. How did that happen? That's pretty cool.
I honestly don't remember. It was right around the time that we did this thing with Feist where she was putting out her album Metals, and at the time Mason Jar was doing all these videos where we would put together like a large chamber ensemble with strings and woodwinds, and we would write these arrangements for them and film these sort of very unique live recordings in interesting spaces around New York. So we must have pitched to Feist just as on a whim to be like, hey, we would love to work with you. And her manager eventually got back to us and said, okay, let's do this. Let's do a sort of invite-only album release show in New York. And around the same time, I guess we must have been trying to do PR. I can't remember. This is like just after college. We were just trying to figure it all out. And somehow some writer from Fast Company got involved to like do a story about the album release show with Feist. And then that came out, and like a week later, there was we were suddenly one of the most innovative music companies of that year. We had no idea that it was coming.
Dude,
we
that's
just
pretty.
Got an email one morning. It was a trip.
That's pretty serendipitous.
Yeah, it was definitely a weird and cool promo selling point for a while.
Wow, you got to tell me how to do that. I want to be one of the most innovative podcasts from not Fast Company, but from Rolling Stone or something. Dan's a native New Yorker and a graduate of the Clive Davis Department of Recorded Music at NYU. He's performed or recorded with Judy Collins, Rosanne Cash, The Whiskey Collection, Bennett Jackson, and the Ranch Hands, and served as the guitarist for the Guy Clark Celebration at the Ryman. He lives with his wife, their son, and 2 dogs in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm assuming you got a newborn?
I have a 1.5-year-old.
Congratulations. And I would bet those 2 dogs are infinitely easier than the 1.5-year-old, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You don't know that. Nobody tells you that until it happens. You're like, how the hell? Well, anyway, congratulations on your 1.5-year-old and all the stuff you got going on. And thanks for coming on the show, man.
My pleasure.
I want to actually backtrack because you just said something. So you started this Mason Jar Music when you were fresh out of college or shortly thereafter?
Yeah, we started it actually in college, during college.
Okay, so a few questions. I'm skipping ahead again. Did you come from an entrepreneurial family? Because that's unusual for anybody that age to start a business. And in the music industry, it's even, starting businesses and making money, I hate to say it, is kind of like musicians are kind of allergic to that.
Yeah,
they certainly don't deserve it.
There's sort of a twofold thing with it. One is that this program at NYU that I went to, the Clive Davis program, they definitely have a focus on, yes, you should be good at music and you should be good at making records and you should know the history and the business, but you should also have a plan for your career and have a general sense of
that's great
how you're going to make your way in the world. And so there was a big focus on that as you're looking towards graduation of like, how am I going to put myself out there into the world? And so Mason Jar Music came from that. I started it with a guy named John Seal, who also went to that same department at NYU. And then also my parents are both freelancers. So I think I grew up with a general sense of like,
gotcha.
You make your own work. And before that, my grandfather was an entrepreneur and a businessman and a very self-made guy. So I think that was all kind of there. And then the Clive Davis program was very good at in a polite way being like, okay, cool. Being good at your craft is only part of it.
That's great. If you're comfortable, what did your folks do, or what does
my dad is a writer. He was the editor of a music magazine in the 70s called Crawdaddy that was a competitor to Rolling Stone. And then shortly before I was born, he started.
I want to talk to you about the Bose S1, which is an amazing speaker for acoustic guitars that I've been playing lately. The S1 has two separate channels. It has one for your guitar and then another one for a microphone. And then there's a third channel you can use for a looper or for backing tracks that you could access by Bluetooth or through a 1/8 inch plug. And the S1s are also very easy to carry. It's got an easy to grab top handle and absolutely anyone can tote it around, and it's also rechargeable for up to 11 hours. The S1 was specifically designed to optimize the sound of your acoustic guitar on acoustic guitar gigs. The guitar and mic channels each have separate tone, volume, and reverb controls, and there's also a proprietary tone match switch which restores and optimizes the natural sound of your acoustic guitar, which, as you know, is typically the biggest problem with acoustic amps. Now, I tested the S1 myself, and the tone, volume, and reverb controls sound great, and they're very responsive. You can position the S1 in 4 different ways. You can tilt it back so you broadcast out to an audience, or you could put it horizontally, vertically, or on a stand. And the cool thing is the S1 has a Bose accelerometer, so it automatically adjusts the EQ and optimizes the sound for whichever one of these 4 positions you're using. The S1 also happens to be the best Bluetooth speaker that Bose makes, which is pretty compelling since Bose is known for the quality of their Bluetooth speakers. So effectively, you have an acoustic guitar amp, a PA, and a killer Bluetooth speaker all in one. And the bottom line is this. If you're an acoustic guitar player, there's absolutely nothing out there that sounds this good and this big that's also easy to carry and battery powered. As far as the Bluetooth speaker goes, I've used it many times here at home for family barbecues, and the sound is so good, my kids wind up arguing over who gets to play the music they want. You know, it's literally like having a full stereo system out on your patio. You can use the S1 for DJing, tailgating, or whatever you want. Before this, you'd have to spend a bunch of money on loads of different speakers and pedals to get the same thing the S1 does on its own. On top of that, it looks great just like all Bose devices do. And besides whatever money back guarantee you get from wherever you buy the S1, Bose also warranties the S1 for 2 years for any kind of defects in materials or performance. For more information and to find out where to get your own S1, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/S1. That's everyonelovesguitar.com/S1. Get the S1. It's outstanding. Are you looking to buy or sell a home in the Tampa Bay area without having to deal with pushy realtors? Then make sure you connect with West Florida Real Estate. West Florida Real Estate has helped over 300 homeowners and investors buy and sell their properties over the last 5 years. Their service is outstanding, just like back in the days when there was actually service in the service business, and you'll never have to deal with any kind of sales junk when you're working with them. For more information, email Ann with an E at westfloridarealestate.com. That's ANNE at westfloridarealestate.com. If you're enjoying this show and you'd like to support it, go to everyonelovesguitar.com/support. And for information on advertising, Visit everyonelovesguitar.com/advertise.
He collaborates on people's autobiographies. So he interviews
Oh, that's
people.
cool.
Yeah, he's essentially a ghostwriter who gets
Yeah, right. I was going to say that. Yeah.
Which I realized not that long ago is like almost exactly what I do, but for books.
Yeah.
Like I have the exact same job as my dad.
Except you're in music.
Yeah, exactly. I sit with people, I listen to their stories and their songs, and I help them craft and present the best version of their story in a record.
That's really cool. And what does your mom do?
My mom is an interior designer, and yeah.
So I would assume they were super supportive of you getting involved in music, them being creatives themselves.
Yeah, and
that's really cool.
And lifelong music fans. Like they were the perfect amount of supportive, but not trying to be stage parents at all. Like,
is that a thing? People like that? I haven't met many. I haven't interviewed many people that have parents like that. Most of them are supportive.
What of parents who are like big time trying to push and be managers and stuff?
Yeah, I haven't met anybody like that.
I think that there's probably less of that in music, but certainly in New York, when you grow up around people who are in like musical theater or other performing arts, I think that's a thing in New York.
Oh, it is really.
Yeah, a very pushy parents who have career ambitions maybe larger than what their kids
like they're living vicariously through their kids. What they didn't accomplish, they're going to make sure their kids accomplish it. See, that's a job, man. That's work. That's raising kids is tough enough. To take over their lives is just
tough. And also if I don't know, my feeling is like if a kid is involved in the arts and it brings them joy, that's beautiful. Anything
period.
That, yeah, like pushing for a career beyond that is like that takes the joy out of it right from the start.
Man, pushing anything takes the joy out of it, to be honest with you. But yeah, for sure. Okay. And then the other question I had related to the same thing was, I was really impressed as a guy who's been in sales for, 30 something years, when you said we were pitching Feist. How did you go out and pitch stuff, man? This is really cool. Cause this is why I think it's cool, because musicians are entrepreneurs and they don't look at themselves like that till down the line.
Totally.
And then they realize it. But if you're not pitching, people, there's like a little devil on this shoulder and an angel, marketing is bad, and it's nothing gets bought unless it gets sold first. That's the reality of it.
Yeah. Well, at least for me, Mason Jar was a really good vehicle for that in a lot of ways, but in a large part just because it was a brand. It wasn't just like me. Like at that age, I wouldn't have emailed Feist to be like, hey, I should do anything for you.
Right.
But with like a company logo and a sense of like, we are this, at the time we were Mason Jar Music was a collective of musicians and producers and engineers and filmmakers and music composers. And kind of part of our motivation at the time was like, all right, we're all in college or just out of college. If we present ourselves as this entity, we can potentially get work above what maybe just like a recent college graduate with no work experience would be able to drum up. And we also made these really ambitious videos that kind of put us on the map a little bit and gave us enough credibility where it was like, we had the confidence that if someone on Feist's team or Leslie herself were to see any of the stuff we had done, that the work would speak for itself. And
right.
But if they like saw a picture of us at like, age 19, they'd be like, there's no way we're giving people money to like make an album release show happen.
Yeah. It'd be like those early pictures of like Bill Gates, when he first started Microsoft. Totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
And like John and I always wore like shirts and ties to any of the video sessions in some hope of like trying to be more credible than maybe we were.
Yeah. That's good though, man. But that's all part of the game and learning. I think that's probably valuable experience or invaluable experience.
Yeah, it was huge, and even like just on the level of being able to harness the resources of all these people in our community to make something where everyone was sort of firing on all cylinders, where it was like the camera people were really invested in making something that looked beautiful. The composers were really invested in making an arrangement that felt like that was their best expression. All the musicians were psyched to be playing with people like the Wood Brothers or Feist or people who were you weren't necessarily going to just go do a session with as a recent NYU grad. And so it really, at the time, it was just like, man, this is a lot of people's best work. And how cool to like, just be able to facilitate that and experience it. And then also sort of be able to use that as a launching pad for the rest of a career was really amazing.
Is Mason Jar still around?
Yeah. So John, when I left New York, I sort of stepped away from the company for a number of reasons, and really largely because I didn't really want to continue to do video work. I just I love playing music. I love being in the studio, and the video side of it, as fun and fruitful as it was, and I'm really proud of everything we did, just was not what I wanted to continue to be doing.
Sure.
John still runs the company with the sort of evolving crew of folks, and he still has a studio in New York.
Very cool, man. Very good. Good story, man. And congratulations on that early. I give you really a lot of credit because it's tough to do stuff, especially in New York. It ain't like it's not cutthroat or competitive there. I shouldn't use the word cutthroat. It's not cutthroat. It's just competitive. It's
competitive. But also, I mean, I think I took for granted when I was a kid growing up there, like there really is a sense of okay, you want to do something, go do it.
Yes.
Like, make it happen. No one is going to extend that invitation to you. And so having that, like having grown up in New York and then going to NYU where people are arriving from all over the country and sort of realizing that of like, oh man, okay, the city is here. I can just go do what I want to do. Was a really beautiful confluence of things.
Did you ever go to Pizza Box?
I don't think I did, but
you're kidding me. Are you serious?
About New York pizza.
Right on Bleecker Street. It was, oh my God, they just closed it down like 5 years ago, man. It was open. I started going there when I was like 14. I'm 56 now. And they closed it like about 4 or 5 years ago. Even my kids used to go there.
I was always Joe's.
Oh yeah. Joe's over on Carmel. On the other side of Bleecker.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I got you.
Well, really, I mean, I grew up in the Upper West Side, so my true home pizza is Sal and Carmine's.
Right. I get you, man. I had a memorial when they closed Pizza Box. It was terrible. It was the only place they had a garden out back. You could sit out back and eat pizza. Where can you do that in New York? Especially in the Village. It's all quiet there and shit. Anyway, tell me how you first got started in the music business and what was your first, I don't say big break, but first break.
I got started in the music business. I mean, I guess Mason Jar was really, I mean, I was in bands all through like middle school and high school, and we would play shows around New York, and but in terms of like a professional break, Mason Jar was definitely that. And one of the early things that we did for this artist named Josh Garrels got a lot of visibility online because he had this really loyal fan base. And then from that, we had I think it was with the Wood Brothers, we were featured on NPR on the morning edition. And that, I have no idea how many eyeballs that really drew to us or how much it really like, oh, that was a break, but it just felt like credibility. It felt like, oh yeah, we're like really doing this, and we can email someone and be like, as seen on NPR.
That's where you go, man. That's perfect. That's really cool.
And so that definitely felt like a really early, like, yeah, we're making this work.
That's really cool, man. I just thought, do you happen to know a guy named Morgan? This is embarrassing. He's got to be around your age. He's a New York City cat. He plays in a stoner. Morgan McDaniel?
I don't think so. I'm not super in touch with the New York scene. To be perfectly honest.
Yeah, he's around your age, so I ask. All right. So besides being a player, you're an engineer, mixer, producer. How did you get into these other areas behind the glass, and how did you grow that side of your business?
Well, I was always so I started playing guitar when I was 9, and I was always the kid that like wanted to have band practice. Like if we had a little band starting in 5th grade, and like Friday afternoon would come and you could either like go jam at someone's house or like go to the movies or go, play baseball in the park or whatever. And I was always like, let's go jam. Let's have band practice. And so from there, like I got a little 4-track recorder, and I was always the instigator of any sort of band happenings. and then, started messing around with pedals and having fun with the multi-track recorder. And I guess sometime in high school, I sort of like figured out what a record producer was, or that was like what I had been doing. And in that kind of, I just always figured like I would go study guitar in college and like go to a conservatory or study jazz guitar somewhere. And I found out about this Clive Davis program, and I was like, oh, that's what I have been doing for the past like 8 years at this point, and pursued it from there. And then sometime, I guess after freshman year of college, I met my now wife. Her parents are both musicians, and she very wisely pushed me towards thinking about how I could potentially make a career playing music and not have to be gone all the time, and be home and have a real stable relationship. And so all those things sort of came together to be like, all right, cool. This is a path worth pursuing. How that actually worked out, I'm still guessing at.
And how did you, wow, that's amazing that you met your wife in your first year of college.
Yeah.
So now how are you growing, or how does your business grow?
That's a great question. I wish I knew the answer to it. I mean, I really think it's mostly word of mouth.
Yeah.
I think it's a certain amount of people hearing the records that I've done and wanting to know who did it and looking it up. But honestly, more than that, I think it's musicians to musicians saying, I had a really positive experience making my record with Dan.
Right.
And to that end, I think a lot of like, sorry, we're sort of jumping around a bit, but like, I think a big part of what I learned moving to Nashville was thinking about making music, particularly as a side person or a producer or someone who's in service of someone else's music.
Yes.
It really is a service job. Like, you are there to provide a service for the artist. And part of that service is making the music that is great and compelling. And part of that is making them comfortable and happy and putting them in a place where they feel like they can deliver their best work.
Right.
And so I think a good portion of my work comes from people saying that they had a really positive experience with me and that they're proud of what they made.
Yeah. It seems more than almost, I haven't been involved in every industry in the world, of course, but coming out of the business world, I have worked in a marketing capacity in well over 100 industries. And it seems like in the music business, word of mouth, more than any of the others, is the number one driver of your success. And I think it would be both ways. Like, if you're good, you'll get it. But man, if you're bad, I would imagine you get outed pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. And even if you're good at what you do and you're not pleasant to work with, I think that
yes,
that gets out. I mean, there are some people who are so good that people don't care if they're not pleasant to work with, but
right. I think that's rare. I think that's fewer, especially in the industry as time goes on. Man, I don't think you could be a dick.
And also, I think a part of, I think musicians rely a lot on word of mouth because there's not really as robust of a database of information on the internet as there is about other artistic mediums. Like, there's not really an IMDb for music where you can go and be like, here's exactly who played bass on this record. There's All Music, which does they do a reasonably good job, but it's not very thorough, and it's not specific to songs. So like, you could look at an album and there could be 10 bass players on the album. You can't figure out who's playing bass on the one song that you really love to be able to reach out to a guy and be like, or girl, and say, I want to work with you. Yeah,
that is tough. It is frustrating. I look stuff up and I get frustrated for the same reason. I want to know who played. Because sometimes I'll hear a record and I'm like, oh my God, I want to have that bassist on this show. Right. And I go there and there's 10 of them. I'm like, okay, done. Next.
Exactly. Or you're lucky. I mean, there's a lot of stuff where you just look it up and it just says like, primary artist is the artist. And you're just like, that's not helpful.
Right. At all.
I want to know everything.
Yeah. So anybody listening who wants to start that, A, good luck, and B, is an opera.
Please, so many musicians and producers and engineers would be so grateful.
I don't even know how the hell that, God, could you imagine it's
a huge endeavor, but it's
like taking the census of music is what it is.
And I mean, the thing, like, we don't have to get into a discussion of Spotify and streaming, but man, it would be amazing if there were a browsable database of musician credits where you could be listening to a song and be like, who's playing bass on this? and click on their name and see everything else they played bass on.
Wonderful.
Or engineer or mix or any of that. It's like the internet, the tools are right there. It's just a categorization and data entry thing that just never happened.
Yeah.
Now and every day it gets more and more daunting to try and think about it because so much music comes out every day.
Every day, yeah, which is pretty amazing. One thing I find amazing is people, the average person does not know that the state of affairs, let's say, of the music business, in a sense. I was in the gym today and talking to a guy. He plays guitar. He's a business owner. So he's reasonably intelligent and he's into music. And he was saying something to me about, oh, there's a big tour coming up. It's like Def Leppard with Joan Jett, and a bunch of bands from that area. He goes, why the hell do you think they're touring? I'm like, to get paid. He goes, well, what do you mean?
Make money.
Yeah. He goes, what do you mean? He goes, I said, well, they got to earn a living. He goes, well, don't they sell all the records? This is a guy who's into music. And I said, no. He goes, why? I said, have you ever heard of stream? I mean, like, I was kind of like, I was shocked, but I got to believe more people feel this way than more people are uninformed this way than not.
Yeah.
He goes, what about streaming? I said, look, man, streaming is like health insurance. The amount of healthcare dollars hasn't changed proportionally in the last 20 years. The only difference is the insurance companies get this much and the doctors get this much. It's the same or actually worse in music. Yeah. And he didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah. And I feel like the last sort of big public push by the music industry that got any attention was around Napster and that whole thing, which is like
20 years ago at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And was sort of like, in a lot of ways, was an attempt to hold on to a status quo that was not going to last no matter what.
Right.
There hasn't been a really compelling sort of presentation of like, hey, here's how the music industry is working and not working for artists, and here's what you can do as a music consumer to support the music that you love. Because, the thing about Spotify is like, man, people are listening to hours and hours and hours and billions of hours of music. And like, it's not as if the desire for music has gone away. It's just that the infrastructure that moves the money around is
the dollars shifted. Yeah, totally.
It's not time to sort of be trying to make a living purely in the recorded music world.
You got to have a plan B and C for sure. And most people that are successful do. But it's interesting because the big thing now is, podcasting has become a huge thing. There's like literally 800,000 podcasts. And so Spotify and all these platforms are building specific or putting specific changes in their apps to encourage people to listen to it. Mm-hmm. And what people don't realize is, of course they do. They don't pay podcasters anything.
Right.
So they're basically, every hour you decide to listen to a podcast, instead of, Peter Frampton Comes Alive or any other music, they're doesn't cost them anything.
Right.
And, they're collecting the same revenue. So I'm not surprised that all this is being done. That being said, I'm thrilled people are getting turned on to my show.
Right. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I mean, I feel the same way about music. It's like, man, stuff that I have made has tens of millions of streams, and like, that's beautiful. And artists that I've worked with have fan bases and people who have discovered them through Spotify. That's great. They just also need to get paid a fair living wage.
Bingo. I agree with you 100%, man. Okay. What prompted you to move to Nashville?
So my wife is from Nashville. Her parents split when she was young, and she sort of grew up between New York and Nashville. And Mason Jar had this house in Brooklyn that we lived and worked out of through about half of college and thereafter. It was a 2-unit house with 2 apartments and then a basement, and we had the studio in the basement, and people who were involved in the company were living in the house, and it was a wonderful thing.
That sounds like so much fun.
It was great. Like, we had a full-on house band, literal house band, that like we would back up artists in the studio, and then we all lived there.
That is so cool, man.
It was great. But so our landlord was selling that house, and so we were starting to look around at like commercial lease spaces to open a studio in New York. And my wife very wisely was like, hey, if we do this, we're going to be in New York for at least 5 years, if not longer. We should consider, if you ever wanted to move to Nashville, which I had expressed some interest in, like, now is the window that we should do it. I was very much not ready to do that. And then I just sort of had trying to figure out what my life would look like for the next batch of years, and getting sort of frustrated with the video side of I didn't want to rely on, here's what it came down to. Mason Jar was a collective, which was a really beautiful thing in the early days of it. I think I realized that I didn't want to rely on a ton of other people to do what I did. And I also really wanted to be in the studio. And so moving to Nashville was a good way to sort of have a clean slate and just be like, all right, I built a career as Mason Jar Music, and that was a wonderful vehicle to establish some credibility and feel comfortable behind that brand when I was young. Now, what does it look like if I'm just Dan Knobler, guy who makes records and plays guitar? And moving to Nashville was a great way to try that.
Plus, I'm sure when you move there, I know housing prices have gone up.
Oh yeah, and
you could buy you could get a closet in New York.
Everything about the sort of the lifestyle side of living in Nashville, and just also Nashville is a city that it's very comfortable to make music here. I mean, alone, I'm just like, you park your car, you put your gear in your car, you drive your car to the gig.
Yeah,
like the amount of times I schlepped my gear on the subway in New York is,
I can't imagine that, man.
Life was a lot easier when we got to Nashville.
And the people are so nice there, man. Everybody's so freaking friendly there.
Yeah, and there is, as I said, this culture of like, we are professional musicians. We are here to make music, and it's not. I mean, it's competitive in the sense that you want to be the best version of yourself, but it's a very, very supportive musical community. And if you're good at what you do, like you'll find your people really quick.
Yeah, I would say that for sure, man. What did you do like when you first moved there? How did you, like, you hung out a shingle basically? How did you first get business? Or, I'm assuming you didn't know any, or maybe you knew somebody through your wife.
I knew a couple people, and I mean, so I was playing guitar with a woman named Michaela Ann in New York, and she moved to Nashville a couple months, maybe more than that, before us, and then she asked me to produce her record. So that started like very shortly after we moved to Nashville. I had a record like right off the bat.
That's very cool.
Which was great.
Yeah. Gives you confidence too that you're making the right decision as far as the move.
Yeah, totally. And I had that, and one other, this Cory Chisel and Adriel Denae, who Cory I met through my wife's parents, and we just like had a lovely evening sitting at my mother-in-law's kitchen table one night, and he called me a couple months later and said, hey, Adriel and I want to make a really stripped down duo record. Would you want to produce that? And I was like, absolutely. I mean, he was certainly a well-established artist at that point, and I was, very new to just being a freelance producer. So I had Michaela's record and that record kind of very quickly after I moved to Nashville, and that was wonderful. I'm super proud of both those records. Then when those, there's that weird period when you make a record and then there's a while between when it's done and when it gets released. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I don't have any work and I don't know anyone here. And I genuinely Googled, like, do I go to law school? Do I just drive Uber?
Sure.
And eventually, like, I got called for stuff. I got called to play gigs. I got called to produce records. And it just kind of went from there.
That's awesome. By the way, driving Uber would have been a lot better decision than going to law school, I think.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a quarter life crisis.
That's funny. I never heard that. A quarter life crisis. That's really funny, man. Oh my God.
Well, because there was also a big part of me that was like, I had some success with Mason Jar Music, and when I moved here, there was that sense of like, oh, was that success? What part of that success was I as an individual? Because it was this very collective thing, and who am I as an artist by myself, and what does that look like, and what do I bring to the table? And
sure,
a lot of self-doubt that is still here to this day.
Yeah, but you know what? That's totally normal, and I give you a lot of credit because I think everybody that's, I don't know how old you are, what, like mid-20s, late 20s,
31? No, I'm 30.
Okay. But that's totally normal. I mean, how can you not? Everybody experiences that at that age, but at least you had the balls to be an entrepreneur on your own. I really give you a lot of credit for that. You know, it's a tough thing to do at any age, but so those are what I'm saying is, and I'm sure your parents already told you this and everybody else, that's 100% normal to be thinking those things.
Oh yeah,
man.
no, I mean, and I knew that at the time. I guess I just, every once in a while when you have a conversation with another producer, engineer, and there's that sense of like, well, how did it happen? What did you do? And it's like, I don't have an answer to that. And every part of my, like every piece of sort of confidence and self-doubt I feel like they're in equal parts when I first moved to Nashville and now.
Right.
Like that equation is probably never going to change in a significant way. And I think it's good. I mean, I think any artist should always be wanting to be a better version of themselves.
But over time, what happens is you give less shits about other people's opinions about that. That's which is cool.
That's important.
Get less stress, man. Hey, so I'm going to mention a few artists that you've worked with. If you tell me how you wound up connecting with them and maybe a cool or interesting story about working with them. Judy Collins. I mean, you're like 30 and you worked with Judy Collins, Rosanne Cash, and Bela Fleck, not to mention Chris Thiele. You know, you got a pretty good record so far, man.
Well, the Judy Collins thing, there's a mastering engineer in New York named Alan Silverman who also taught at NYU, and he mastered some of the early records that I worked on. And he has produced most of, if not all of, Judy Collins' the later part of her career's worth of discography. And he was doing a session. They were recutting her version of Both Sides Now for the opening credits of a movie. And he needed a guitar player, and he called me. And so I showed up, and my studio experience in New York was mostly like friends' apartments and this basement at Mason Jar. Like I had never really done a session at like a New York studio. So I show up to Avatar with my gear and just like played guitar. It was
That's a wild.
Trip. And then after that I got called. He called me again for I don't know, maybe I shouldn't say this. It's probably fine. She did a live in Ireland DVD, like live concert DVD.
Yeah.
She played 12-string acoustic on a couple songs, and it was just super out of tune.
Right.
So he called me and asked if I had a 12-string acoustic, and I did. And I brought it over, and he had a screen set up, and I played along. So I am the sound of Judy Collins' 12-string acoustic on her
live in Ireland. Yeah, I think that's pretty common. I don't think that's like a big.
No, I know.
Yeah, everybody does live records and comes back and fixes them because it's out of tune. The speaker was shot. The back line was fucked.
Totally.
Yeah.
So that was a trip.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
Did you get to like talk with her, or it was just overdubbing?
Yeah, I met her. I mean, I met her at the session for the movie. Like, was a full band thing, and she sang it live with us. And
that's cool.
Rob Reiner was there, who was the director of the movie. Like,
was funny.
It was a wild, weird experience for like I guess I must have been 20 at that point.
Dude, imagine. Do you know? This is what happens when you've had so many people on. Rich Eckhart.
I know that name, but I don't know that I know him.
He plays with Toby Keith. I had Rich on the show. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, it plays with Toby Keith. Whew. All right. Anyway, so I had him on the show, and he was telling me they met Leslie West, or he played with Leslie West one time, and they were talking about writing hit songs. And Leslie says to him, "You only need one hit," and that's what I thought of because of Mississippi Queen, how much money they got. But, think about Both Sides Now. How many hundreds of movies and shows has that song been in?
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the 40th recording of that song she's made. Seriously. I mean, you talk about a powerful hit, man.
Yeah.
Rosanne Cash.
Rosanne Cash is my mother-in-law. I'm married to her youngest daughter.
Oh, that's wild.
So in the Mason Jar days, we would do these covers compilations every year. We would it was just a fun excuse to make music without a lot of stakes attached to it. So we would pick a theme, a pretty broad theme, something like home or the American South, or just something that we could sort of make a list of songs, and we would just reach out to different artists and be, hey, do you want to come do a cover of this song? So we had Rosanne come in, which was a really fun and beautiful experience.
Is that weird, producing your mother-in-law?
I've
How do you tell Rosanne Cash? How do you tell Rosanne Cash what to do? And she's your mother-in-law, man. That's like, that's new ground everywhere, man.
It is. Holy shit. I've only worked with her a couple times because she has a long and beautiful creative relationship with her current husband, John Leventhal.
Right.
But I've worked a lot with my wife's father, Rodney Crowell.
Okay.
And so my creative relationship with him is a little bit deeper, and certainly I remember vividly the first time that I had the confidence to sort of be like, hey, Rodney, you should, like, you can do that better, or you should try it this way, or
right.
And yeah, that feeling of like, well, this is an artist who
been around the block a little bit.
Yeah, has been writing hit songs and making hit records longer than I've been alive, and is my father-in-law. What authority do I have to be like, hey, you can sing that vocal better? But now we've been doing it a number of years, and we actually are almost done with what will be his next solo record. And we have a really good rapport about that.
That's cool, man.
There's a lot of trust and love there.
Do you know Duke Levine?
Uh-huh.
I had Duke on the show.
Duke's played a little bit with Rosanne.
Yeah. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, and an amazing player.
Oh, such a good player, man. You know what? Do you ever see his posters he makes for his gigs?
No.
He makes the coolest poster artwork for his gigs, the Lizard Lounge or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I've gone on some deep dive YouTube binges of watching his Lizard Lounge shows.
Right.
I'm a big fan of his.
Really sweet guy. His brother has a pretty successful guitar store in New Jersey as well.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah. You can listen to the interview. He's a good guy.
Yeah.
Bela Fleck.
That was another one from the Mason Jar days where we went to see Abigail Washburn's album release show for her record City of Refuge, and really wanted to work with her, and sort of like accosted her after the show and said, hey, we do this video series, and the next time you're in New York, would you want to come to some abandoned building and film it?
That wasn't your pitch, I hope, right? Hey, do you want to come to some abandoned building?
I mean, I'm sure we were more graceful than that, but in retrospect, it felt like we were kids just being like, come hang out with us. And she very happily agreed. And next time she came to New York, we did this amazing video with her. And then when she and Bela started their duo project, they reached out to us about doing some videos, and brought us out to coastal Oregon to film a series of videos for their project, which I'm really proud of. Really beautiful locations, and obviously just two spectacularly talented musicians.
Was that the first time you'd been flown away to a location?
No, I don't think so. I think we had done the Telluride Bluegrass Festival before that, and we had also done a couple things at the Freshgrass Festival, which we didn't have to fly to, but we were put up in hotels and drove to Western Mass to do that.
That's nice.
But I think it was the first time that like a label had been like, hey, we're releasing a record and we want you to make promo videos for this record. Usually it had been a festival or some other sort of like media sponsor that wanted to do videos and paid us to do the videos.
That's really cool, man. So I'm so impressed with all this experience you got, man. Really, I know you talk about self-doubt, and I know some of it is legit and some of it is in jest, but that had to really give you a lot of confidence, I would say.
Yeah, it did. And I guess, I don't know, I think the reason I keep bringing that up is there's a you read interviews with people and listen to, I listen to plenty of like music oriented podcasts, and I don't know, I just don't want any illusions about like, there are no right answers to any of this stuff.
Correct.
If you hear one person's story and it's like, cool, that worked for them, but it's not necessarily because of anything other than like being a diligent worker, being good at what you do, being kind, and being in the right place at the right time.
Right. A lot of it is serendipity.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know.
And a lot of it is attitude, man. This is really funny. I don't watch a lot of TV. I almost never watch TV. And especially recommendations from my wife's friends because I don't listen to them. I mean, I love my wife dearly, but anyway, and I would listen to any recommendation she ever made, but
Sure.
her friends, maybe not so much. Anyway, so she says, hey man, she said, Craig, someone told me that this show is good. It was The Fabulous Mrs. Maisel. You know that show?
Yeah.
On Amazon. And I said, okay, let's watch it. It's old New York. I love seeing stuff about New York because it's a little, 5 to 8 years behind my time, 5 years behind my time. But I said, I always see it. And, I'm watching that show. Did you happen to watch any of it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen it.
You could learn so much from that woman's attitude because she's so positive and so happy all the time. I mean, it sounds ridiculous because she's a fictional character. But I said to my wife, wow, I've been really inspired watching her because her parents are horrible. Her situation at home is bad. She's always happy. She's always got a smile on her face. She's always willing to pitch in and help. And I'm like, you know what? That is just so cool. And it just reminded me, Craig, just control the controllables,
Yeah.
Don't, smile. It just goes such a long way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what you're talking about too. It's like being nice, pitching in, offering to do something. Maybe you won't get paid for it. Maybe you won't get paid top dollar, but maybe you do a really good job. And that person says, man, I like the work you do. I'm going to recommend you to 15 of my friends that are going to pay you.
Yeah. I mean, I'm certainly a big proponent of whatever the job is, you do your absolute best at it.
Of course.
Right now I'm doing some rough mixes for someone on a record that I am not going to mix. But it's like, who knows who hears those rough mixes? So rather than just opening up the session and just bouncing it out without really paying attention, it's like, you treat it kind of like the first draft of a mix. Does it take a lot longer? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's, you always want to put your best foot forward.
Yeah. You don't want to do a 50% job on anything ever for anybody.
For anything, no matter what the gig is.
There was a guy that, I don't know if you ever heard of, but Rodney's definitely heard of him. Now I'm blanking on his name, who started Muscle Shoals, who was one of the founders. Barry Beckett. I can't think of his first name. Barry Beckett, right? And he said, I worked with a player. I had an interview on my show. I've never blanked out with names so bad. Hopefully it's because I had the flu. And the guy was telling me, Barry told him one time, he said, be careful of the toes you step on the way up, because they may be attached to the ass you need to kiss on the way down.
That's really good.
It was really good. And apparently Barry had that written on a sign outside of his door. I mean, be nice to everybody, man.
Yeah.
If someone leaves a bad taste in your mouth, keep it to yourself and, go to the gym or something. Don't tell him he's an asshole.
Yeah.
What are you working on now that you're excited about?
Well, certainly Rodney's record I'm excited about. I made a record in September with a woman named Allison Russell, who's a part of the band Birds of Chicago and Our Native Daughters. And it was one of the most powerful bodies of work that I've ever had the opportunity to work on, and a truly spiritual studio experience.
In what way?
They're very, very heavy personal songs about her childhood, but they're beautifully poetic and we assembled. I had seen Birds of Chicago is a band that she has with her husband JT, and I'd seen them play, and there are certain musicians that you encounter where they sort of have this improvisatory spirit where it just feels like it's like they're doing their thing with total confidence, but also with the widest open arms, where it's like, as a side person, you can get in there and you're just immediately welcomed into their world, and you can play anything and listen, and it just feels very conversational in the best way. And so I did this one gig with them and sent them an email saying, hey, I really felt beautiful playing music with you guys, and whenever it comes time to make a record, like, please think of me. And this was probably in August, and I think they wrote me back like the next day saying, how's September? And
let me check my calendar.
Yeah, I was like, absolutely. And part of what I wanted to do with them was put together a large band in a studio where you can kind of have everyone together on the floor with minimal isolation and do that thing where it's just like, here's a large group of really sensitive musicians that are all having a conversation, are all super tuned into what they are doing, but also free to express themselves. And it turned out to be just the most perfect, like it was originally going to be a Birds of Chicago record. And then on the end of the first day, they said, hey, we think this is maybe an Allison solo record. And so she ended up singing everything. And she has this presence when she sings and plays clarinet that is just so incredibly powerful. And this group of musicians, I mean, we would finish takes and we would all sort of like look around like, can you believe we all just conjured that? And then by the end of the last day, there would be like multiple minutes of silence after a take because no one wanted to break the spell
of what just happened.
Yeah, of the moment of like communion that we all had together.
Wow, that's
and it feels weird. Like even going home to my wife at the end of the day, I still don't really know how to talk about it in a way that conveys it. It was just it was all the things that are great and beautiful and powerful about music.
What is this, Americana? Or like what kind of music is it?
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, yeah, it's Americana. But it's not really the.
Well, you said clarinet, so it kind of threw me off.
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, I it's interesting. I have a hard time figuring out exactly what genre it is that I work in. I think in a traditional sense, it's Americana because there's folk instruments and it comes from an American roots tradition. But it's definitely not the sort of like alt country type of Americana that we associate with like Jason Isbell or
yeah.
We're at the helm of that movement.
But it's interesting. I had Graham Lesh on, who's Phil Lesh's kid.
They're actually Ali and JT are in a band with them.
With Midnight North? Midnight North?
Capital Sunrays.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Right. Okay. And Graham was referring to the Dead as Americana. And that, I mean, like to me, Americana now, it's I don't like that term, to be honest with you, because when I was younger, it was like rock and roll and maybe Southern rock and then maybe California sort of rock with James Taylor. And now it's just like Americana, but it's just a massive, like anything that is not heavy metal is Americana, which seems weird.
It's a very, and it's useful in a sense because country has come to mean a certain type of like radio-centric modern country that is not necessarily the same as what country music used to be.
Right.
It's a complicated, weird genre. I mean, honestly, more often than not, I think about it as singer-songwriter because it really is that. It's like here's a human being that has something to communicate through song, and the exact genre specifications around that are sort of insignificant. The goal is the presentation of the songs in a compelling way.
When does Allison's record come out?
I don't know. Sometime in probably late this year, maybe early next year. It's one of those weird things where it's like I'm gonna wait around for I'm gonna be telling people about this record for a long time before anyone is able to hear it.
That's nice, man. It sounds like you had a pretty deep experience.
Yeah, it was beautiful. So that was definitely a big highlight of the past couple months.
And I'm assuming her childhood wasn't like Sunshine and Unicorns, that it was, interesting. Very cool, man. On that record, did you produce it and play guitar?
Yeah, I produced and played guitar. And Joe Pisapia also played on that record. And I sort of go back and forth on that. Like, so sometimes I'll play. Oftentimes what will happen, particularly in a situation like that where it is a very sort of everyone live off the floor together, I'll kind of be the like almost the artist's guitar, the artist's right hand, and I'll play acoustic or I'll play sort of the most structural guitar part. And that frees up the artist to just focus on singing. And sometimes that's great and sometimes it makes sense for the artist to play, and sometimes I'm more of like the lead guitar player that's playing the hooks and kind of driving it more. And sometimes I don't know. I certainly feel like I just love other guitar players. Right. So I love any opportunity that I can hire another guitar player and have their perspective. And I can then overdub my own stuff as I need it. But it's super fun for me to be like, cool, yeah, let's get Joe Pisapia in here. Let's get any number of incredibly talented and interesting guitar players that are around Nashville.
Who else do you work with typically?
On guitar or
on guitar.
On guitar, Joe Pisapia plays on a bunch of stuff. Chris Donegan is a guitar player, session guitar player here who I really love. I made a record recently that Courtney Hartman played guitar on, which was a really, really fun. We actually played a good bit on that too. She was very much the lead guitar player. Sadler Vaden played on a record that I did recently that
I had him on the show.
So much fun.
Dude, you talk about a guy with a story.
Yeah.
Get to know that dude, man.
Yeah, he's great. I love him. On this Rodney record, we've been working with Audley Freed a bunch, who's just this.
I love that guy, man. He's coming on my show next week, but I've probably spent 4 hours talking to him on the phone.
And Rodney and Stuart Smith are also really close. And so Stuart played on some of this record too. And Stuart's just one of the most, he's one of the most amazing musicians I've ever been in the room with.
That's cool, man.
And talk about someone who's driven to being the absolute best version of themselves. Like he'll do a pass of something that to me feels like, well, that's perfect. There's nothing about that could be improved. And he'll be like, hey, give me the second chorus again. I can like nail that little movement a little bit better. And you'll do it. And he's right every single time. It's like, yeah, you know what you were capable of. And
that's cool.
You haven't given us exactly the maximum that you're capable of. You're not going to settle for that. And that's
cool, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's no shortage of great talent in Nashville, man.
And then I'm also a big, like I'm a someone that has studied the sort of the classic, recording crews of Motown and Stax and the Atlantic crew, and like I'm a big fan of I put a lot of stock in long and meaningful relationships with other musical collaborators, and so to that end I've worked with a drummer named Jason Berger since we were in high school.
Wow, that's cool.
He still lives in New York, but he'll fly down to Nashville for the vast majority of records that I do, because there's an unspoken deep creative relationship there that is a huge part of what I do.
Yeah.
Him and Jamie Dick on drums are the two people that I rely on most. And actually both of them played on that Allison Russell record, which was a really beautiful experience for me of like, here's two of my closest friends and musical collaborators who rarely get to be on a record together, because how often do you get to have two drums? And they played two drum sets across that whole record. That
is really cool, man. Have people done that with you, like long term, like stuck with you over certain things?
There are a couple people. I've made records with a guy named Bennett Jackson who I went to college with, and we've done I think 4 records now, and it's it's like every 2 years he has a batch of songs, and he and I and a guy named Sean O'Brien all get together and make a record. And Maya DeVitri, I've done 2 solo records with her and a record with her band, the Stray Birds. And we've had some conversations about the importance of, or just the beauty in that continued creative relationship. And certainly there are people I've made records with that my fingers are crossed that they'll call me again.
Yeah.
But it's like the circumstances in everyone's lives change, and you never really know what, that's the part of that freelance thing of like, any bit of success is there's no guarantee that continues.
Absolutely,
you can make successful records, and all those people could go on another journey.
Yeah, or the the artist's spouse or partner could say like, I think you need to do something different, and then it's gone.
Yeah, or I mean any number of things. But I certainly, I mean, the Beatles are the cleanest example of like an artist and a producer that evolved together and continued to make, incredibly creative and interesting music over the course of their careers.
Well, may your career be as fortuitous as George Martin's.
Yeah, truly.
Even half that, even a tenth that. I wish all the luck in the world to that extent, man. Dan, you're a young guy. I'm almost reluctant to ask you this. Any low points or dark periods you've had to deal with?
I mean, my parents got divorced, which was, complicated.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, honestly, I haven't had any major trauma in my life, and I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Good for you, man.
I mean, I think, as we've discussed, I think any life in a creative pursuit involves a good bit of fluctuation between confidence and self-doubt, and between a feeling of accomplishment and a feeling of imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And so I certainly struggle with that on a daily basis. But
if it makes you feel any better, almost everybody I speak to does.
Totally. I mean, I think that is just part of. I think that's part of the. It's part of what drives you to want to make a life in music in the first place.
Yeah.
I think if you don't have that desire to be your best, or to express yourself as best as possible, then you probably aren't driven to put up with the rest of the life of a musician.
You should. I think any entrepreneurial, if you're not willing to be driven like that, you're not going to survive in business, man. It's funny. I've had so many guys use those terms, almost, the verbiage is very close to, I'm always afraid I'm going to be outed. Because I'm not that good of a guitar. And like, I've had the best guitar players say, there are other guys as good, I've had Satriani and now those guys aren't worrying about being outed. But my point is, I've had people that are amazing players and like, I hope nobody outs me.
Totally.
And they've talked about it publicly on the show. It's not.
Yeah. And I think part of that too is like, you are the only person that's living in your own head all the time.
Yeah.
And so for me, certainly, like I get bored with my own musical ideas on guitar, because to me it just feels like, well, I've done that before, and I've approached this chord voicing this way before, but no one else is in my head. And so to other people, it's like, oh, Dan's got a really interesting and cool voice on the guitar, and to me, it's like, let's get another guitar player in here. I'm sick of this. And yeah, I think every musician has that to some degree.
Yeah, I totally get it. It was funny because some guy said to me recently, he goes, and I'm in no way comparing myself to a career in music. He goes, man, how do you get people to stay on a call with you for that long? I'm like, I'm not fucking thinking about that. Are you out of your mind? I'm not going to start asking myself that question. What's the greater good of getting an answer for that question? Like, I need to think more about, but so I have had similar experiences. Like, don't ask me that. Yeah. Let's talk about gear for a few minutes, and this will be interesting, but hear your take. What's your go-to guitar for you that you like to play? What's your, give me your top three. And also, I'm curious, what do you like hearing most in the studio?
Well,
there you go, man. Reach. I love to see it.
This is my main guitar.
A Telecaster in Nashville? That's nuts, man.
No, believe it or not, the recycled guitar player from Nashville plays a Telecaster. Yeah, this is just a normal 52 reissue Tele that I have done various things to over the years and just have loved into its current state. And for whatever reason, it's become a really special guitar. And people will pick it up in the studio and be like, oh man, that's a really good Tele. And it's just like an off the rack, Fender reissue from the mid 2000s.
What did you do to it?
I had Matt Brewster at 30th Street Guitars in New York shave down the neck a little bit and shave off the finish on the back, so it has the wood. I've changed out a couple pieces of hardware, new tailpiece, and new neck pickup.
What'd you put in there, if you remember?
A Lawler special. And I mean, I think honestly a big part of it is the way that Matt has treated that neck. I don't know what magic he does, but he builds these guitars under the name Rust, and his Teles and Strats they just feel so friendly to play. So I brought my Tele to him when I was living in New York and was just like, can you just make it feel like one of yours? So that's definitely my main instrument. And then I play a Jerry Jones baritone a good bit that's tuned A to A. Particularly, I do a good bit of playing duo gigs in Nashville where it's me and the songwriter. So the songwriter's playing acoustic guitar, me being on baritone, I can sort of get down below them and cover some low end, even if it's not necessarily bass parts, but I can play, it's tuned to A. So if I'm playing an open G chord, that's a C. And so A, it's like I can play different open chord voicings than the artist is doing, which will just give an interesting harmonic lift. And I can also be in sort of either up in the guitar range or way down in the bass range. So those are kind of my two main things. And then
go to that Jerry Jones 1 second before you get it. There's not a lot of those guitars around, man. How did you even get turned on? You're a young cat to be turned on to a Jerry Jones.
Well, I played a Dan Electro for a long time, and I saw. I don't know how I first knew about Jerry Jones. I just, it's like you do late night Googles about gear. And
late night Googles about gear. That's the truth, man. You're like, and then sometimes what happens, like all of a sudden by the morning you get pulled. I'm now an expert in African American history from this decade, and like you should just look.
You take it back far enough, it's a total sociological endeavor.
It is.
I mean, I think I'm also just a big fan generally of all of the catalog guitars and amps. The Silvertones and the Dan Electros and the Ks and all that. So I must have at some point been searching around about that and discovered, Jerry Jones, like Luthier in the 90s, made sort of high-end versions of these catalog guitars with nice parts. So I saw one on Reverb and was like, man, I play this thing enough, not as like a gimmick in the studio, but as a real like instrument, that I should get myself a nice version of it. And I did. And really, I mean, I love the Dan Electro one a lot, but man, it went from like, it felt like having a toy car versus like the real thing.
Nice.
So smooth and cooperative.
People that play those guitars love those guitars, man.
They're great. It's hard to keep the baritone, because most people tune a baritone B to B, and I tune it A to A. And it's hard, particularly when the seasons change in Nashville, to keep it in tune.
Yeah.
You kind of have to continually mess with the truss rod and adjust the action and intonate it properly. And
you probably use heavier strings on there.
Yeah, I use super, super heavy strings.
What do you like in this? To me, could you come like this a little closer to the mic? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. What do you use in the studio? What do you like?
The Thiele is definitely like my first. If I had to bring one guitar to a session, I'd bring that Thiele. I often reach for a Gretsch Country Gentleman, particularly for like single note, little slower single note hook lines. I have a Harmony Rocket that I really love that has.
That's like a 335 Harmony, right?
Exactly.
I'm looking to buy a Stratotone now, man. I love those.
And then on the acoustic side, I have a 60s Gibson Dove that belonged to my mother-in-law that was given to my wife when we got married. So it's technically my wife's guitar, but she doesn't play. So I'm supposed to ask her permission to use it in the studio. That's not the most effective system.
Yeah. Hey, honey, sorry to wake you. Can I use it?
Can I do an overdub on your Gibson? But it has this really dark, woody thing, and I haven't changed the string since it was given to us, and it's got this really thin neck, and it just, I don't know, there are certain guitars that you pick them up, and they sort of demand something of you, and there are certain guitars that you pick up, and they're just like, I'm here, like, let's play whatever you want to play, and that Dove is one of those.
That's nice.
And then I have a couple guitars of Rodney's. I have a Waterloo that's sort of a version of a Gibson LOO. And I have a 50s Southern Jumbo that's maybe the cleanest, big, beautiful strumming recording guitar that I've ever heard.
That's nice, man.
Those are in the studio these days, and I reach for those a lot.
What do you like amp-wise in the studio?
I have a Silvertone Twin 12 is probably my main go-to. And then I have this weird Maestro, I think it's called an Echo Reverb Deluxe. It's essentially, it's a deluxe reverb. It's Maestro's version of a deluxe reverb.
Okay.
And it's just, it has a very interesting and specific reverb circuitry that doesn't really sound, it's got this darker, weirder thing, and the tubes sort of break up the signal as it goes to the spring, and so you get this kind of driven reverb that's really cool. So those two, and I have a Pro Reverb that's sort of a higher wattage, cleaner, crisper thing. But a big part of what I do in the studio is I have speaker cabs, just speakers only in cabs in different places around the studio, some in booths and some out on the floor. And there are speaker cable lines that run all over the studio. So I keep all the amps either with me in the live room if I'm playing with the band, or in the control room. And I just pull a speaker cable out and plug it into the back of whichever amp. And I can send it to a different room or to a different speaker and sort of mix and match amps and speakers. And then it's also super easy to switch amps if you know, oh man, this amp isn't working on this tune. You don't have to go into the booth and move the mics and pull the amp out. You just literally like plug a speaker cable into the right amp.
Yeah, that's smart, man.
Yeah, and I'm a big, like, I think that's I find that to be a really, really useful workflow in the studio.
Yeah, it was a lot more efficient, and you can maximize time, not dicking around.
Even if you had one amp only, you just have the knobs next to you. Like, I hate that feeling of being in the studio and like you got to unplug your guitar and walk over to the booth where your amp is and plug it in and like check your knobs. And I like having everything tactile in front of me.
Do you know Jerry McPherson? I
don't think so.
He's a session player in Nashville. He's a first call guy. He's probably been there 35 years.
Yeah.
He actually has a patent on a device that he developed that has to do with moving mics around in a studio. And I don't know it or understand it well enough, but if you looked it up, or you can listen to the interview.
Yeah, I've seen, I don't know if it's his system or something similar, but I've seen other sort of like mic stands with remote control capabilities where you can move the mic remotely, which is both beautiful, and also I think I would go crazy if I had that, because part of being in the studio is just committing to a decision.
Yes,
sounds good. You sort of got to be like, all right, cool, let's roll with that.
Yeah.
And if you can move the mic in millimeters without, going over to the amp.
Yeah.
In that zone forever.
I get it, man. Tell me you mentioned a bunch of people. First CD that you ever purchased. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was an Allman Brothers Greatest Hits record with the blue denim on the cover. I remember so vividly.
Where'd you buy it?
Probably Tower Records on the Upper West Side.
Oh, on 72nd Street.
Yep.
Is that still there?
No, it's gone.
Tower's gone in general, right?
Tower's gone in general, yeah.
Yeah, I thought so. I lived at that Broadway and 4th Street location, man. That was so cool.
Yeah, I was a huge Allman Brothers fan, and growing up in New York, every year they would do their Beacon Theater run, and I think my parents first took me when I was like, must have been just after I started playing guitar, so I was probably like 10 or 11, and I just remember being like, this is the greatest thing that there could ever be. And I got really, really, really into Derek Trucks. He was a super heavy influence on me when I was younger.
Yeah, but how could you not be?
Yeah, and that guy, man. I think he's probably like 10 years older than me and joined the band like right around that time. So to me, it was like I could totally see it was totally realistic for me to be like, I could be an Allman Brother. Look at that guy.
That's right, man. That's cool. Yeah, I took my son, who's your age or maybe a year behind you, to see one of those runs in, I think, 2011. We saw the Brothers, and then we saw Government Mule at the year end. The Beacon's such a great place to see shows. My God, isn't it?
It is now. For a long time, it was not at all. It was really gross and run down. And then they did a big renovation, like probably 10 or 15 years ago, and now it's like a beautiful old theater.
Oh, so yeah, because I remember I saw Buddy Guy there as a kid, and it wasn't nice at all. Buddy Guy, and I saw B.B. King and Greg Allman there.
Yeah,
it was not as good as it is now. Hey, give me your top 3 Desert Island discs.
Oh man, I don't know. That's hard. Maybe Guy Clark, Dublin Blues, Ry Cooder, Paradise and Lunch, and maybe like Miles Davis, Jack Johnson.
Wow, that's pretty diverse. Holy smokes, that's really impressive. You know, it's funny. A guy sent me an email the other day. He goes, and it's true, I never thought of it. He goes, it's funny how you could ask people, what's been the lowest point of their life, and they have no problem telling you. But the stress and agony people have when you ask them what are their 3 favorite. And I never realized that. And I'm like, holy shit, he's right. Because people are really like, oh my God, they're like get anxious sometimes.
Well, the moment that you really started thinking like, if I could only listen to 3 records ever again, the stakes feel so high.
Oh, that's stressful, man. I feel it. Hey, what is your definition of happiness?
Wow. These are serious questions. Definition of happiness.
I can ask you about string gauge if you prefer.
Yeah, I'd love to talk about the definition of happiness. I don't know what my definition of happiness is, but I can tell you definitively that being with my wife and my baby is it. I mean, there are other things that contribute to it, but I mean, contentness and safety, I suppose, is what it comes down to.
I have to reframe that question because that's the question I'm really asking. What makes you happy?
Yeah.
So thank you. I'm going to change that. We're breaking all sorts of new ground here.
Yeah.
Dan, this is awesome.
What makes me happy is an easier question to answer. Being with my wife and my baby.
Yeah.
Being in an open, creative environment with people who I love and respect.
Right on. May you have a lifetime of that, man. Something or someone you miss from your childhood?
So, one of the guys that I sort of grew up playing music with, his name was Zach Rosen, and I started playing. Was a wonderful, wonderful bass player who I met in 8th grade and continued to play with for about 15 years after that. He died last year.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
He was the first like really close friend and close musical collaborator who I've lost, and he's certainly a musical presence in my life at all times, and someone who I would not be the same musician or human being had I not spent time with him.
Well, man, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Most important thing your dad taught you? You laugh. What prompted that laugh?
Because I mean, he gave me the gateway to all the music that I love. He's a lifelong music fan and had a beautiful record collection that actually is now back out of storage again, but for a while sort of got tucked away. But yeah, I mean, he certainly he put me on the path towards all the music that I love.
That's right.
He's a writer, so he taught me the importance of communicating and presenting your ideas in a clear and concise way.
It's interesting. When you are a writer, it definitely helps your communication skills so much beyond measure.
And I think also there is sort of like I said, I think a huge part of what I do now making records is very much in line with what he did. And a part of that is like listening to and understanding and internalizing someone's story and then helping them present it in the most accessible and emotionally compelling.
Yeah, there you go. No, I know you're doing exactly what your dad did, except on music. Very true.
And so that's probably the most important part, the most important thing that he's taught me is like listen to someone's story and understand it in your own framework and help them present it in a way that allows everyone to get inside of their story.
Most important thing your mom taught you?
Every problem has a solution, I suppose, whether that's like how to fit stuff into a small New York apartment or into the trunk of a car, or, how to solve a scheduling crisis. She just has an overwhelming positivity that's like, all right, we'll figure it out. That's an obstacle. We'll figure out how to get around it.
Do you have any hobbies outside of music? Not that you have any time for it. Between a year and a half old, your 2 dogs and the studio.
The baby is. I don't want to call the baby a hobby because the baby is a
no, but it's a time.
But yeah, exactly.
It's a time commitment.
I definitely love eating. I don't know if that's a hobby, but like when my wife and I travel, our primary motivation is like, where are we eating and what's it going to be? And
right. So you're foodies.
Yeah, we're foodies in that sense. And also, I mean, I love movies and TV and other art form. I mean, certainly whenever I'm in New York, we try and go to one of the museums.
Right.
So
you haven't been there since you had your baby, though.
We've been to New York a couple times, and we actually took the baby to the Guggenheim.
Did you really?
Yeah, when he was really small, and it was beautiful.
That's good, man.
Yeah.
It's funny. I never forget. We take our kids have been to the city many times, but when we go, all we do is walk around. You know, there's so much to see there. And so my kids were, we have 3 kids. My kids were probably, I don't know, 19, 17. No, it's probably 15, 13, and then 5. We have a big gap between 2 boys and the girl. And nothing was working, and everybody was really cranky. And then we wound up, it was a beautiful spring day. We wound up in Central Park on, one of the cool rocks, with this grass and stuff. And we just sat down, and it was amazing. Then they started running around and having so much fun. And it was really like, we learned the kids, they don't want to sightsee. They don't find the same things interesting we do. They want to be kids. Right. They want to run around, and I think I might have even bought a football just to throw around. We just wanted to be kids. It was a very you learn as a parent because you don't have all the answers along the way. It was really a good experience for us. That and food. 2 more questions. Toughest decision you've had to make, or most difficult thing you've had to do?
Probably deciding to move to Nashville. At the time, it felt like it took a lot of, I don't want to say courage because it's not.
No, I think it's a fair word.
Yeah. I mean, like we had a good bit of success with Mason Jar Music. And even though it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing, it was like, man, I'm young and I have a business that is successful. I'm making a living making music. Like it seems crazy to walk away from that and move to a new city. But it's also, I'm so glad that we did it. And honestly, I give my wife all the credit on that. She knew that it was time for me to walk away from that particular endeavor. And she knew that I was going to find footing in Nashville very quickly, but that seemed so daunting at the time.
Yeah. Is she like pretty intuitive? She must be.
She's a wonderful woman. Yeah. She's good. Yeah. Very intuitive. And because she's the parent or the child of 2 artists, she just inherently understands a lot of things about the business that probably you don't understand. Not to take away from, but because you didn't grow up in that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and from big picture stuff to like even the little picture things of like coming in after a day of mixing where it's like, in reality, I've sat in a chair and made minute changes to a song over the course of the day, and I'll come in and be like, I am exhausted because it's like it's just such a crazy amount of focus for an extended amount of time.
A ton of minutia, obsessive.
And someone who doesn't understand that world would just be like, you were crazy. You just sat in there and listened to music all day. And there was, from the very beginning of my relationship with Carrie, she understood that there's a large mental drain that goes with working on something like this all day.
Very cool, man. I'm happy for you guys. It's awesome. Yeah. Plus whenever you leave New York for a place that as a New Yorker you perceive is lesser than, which is pretty much every place in the world. I hate to say, but we're very ethnocentric coming out of New York. It is tough, man.
Yeah, it was definitely a transition. But also, really coming to Nashville to make music it was a pretty welcoming transition.
Yeah. Like I said, the people are the best there. Never met greater people. And last question, I got to change this question a little bit to, let's say, 5 years. Biggest change in your personality over the last 5 years, and how much of that change has been intentional and how much is just a product of aging?
I think probably being really intentional about setting boundaries between work and life, whether that's like a scheduling thing of, particularly with the baby now, but a scheduling thing of being like, all right, I'm going to finish, like the session's going to be over at 5 p.m. and then I'm going to not think about music for the rest of the day. Or just trying to separate like separate your ego from the artwork, separate your sense of, I mean, you know, because as someone who is entirely in service of other people's art, like my artistic identity is never the point. If I'm producing a project, like I might feel like I've had a lot of influence on the record, and I might feel that the record would be very different or worse had I not been involved. But at the end of the day, it's not my art, and I'm not going to be acknowledged for it. And I've definitely struggled with how to feel at peace with my contributions without looking for validation from outside sources.
Man, that is so important, not just for your art, but as a human being, to allow your own independence. And because if you don't do that, you're forever searching, forever. It doesn't just stop with your art. You're always looking for the attaboy.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of the time in life, it's not there.
Yeah.
So total kudos to you, man.
And, you know, it's easier said than done, but that's been a priority in my life the past 5 years of how to sort of keep that in check and, you know, maintain a happiness and a sense of like, whether or not this is acknowledged, whether or not this record is commercially successful, being proud of your contribution to it and feeling at peace with that in itself, and not because of any success it had or because of, you know, getting your name in Rolling Stone or whatever it is.
But just having that awareness, I think, goes a long way towards, you know, if you're not aware of a problem or an issue, you're never going to fix it. But usually once you have an awareness of something, you know, you at least get it under control and can talk yourself off the ledge.
Yeah.
If you need to, man. I mean, that doesn't end, you know. I'm still doing that with certain things, man. Hey, first of all, I want to thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm going to have you back on the show in like 5 or 6 years. You're going to be like, I'm telling you right now, this is my prediction. You're going to be a big time producer. You're going to have a ton of shit going on. You may not even take my call, but I'm going to somehow, I'll get a hold of your secretary.
I will happily come back. I appreciate the confidence.
No, seriously, man. I think you're a super professional guy. You got your shit together, and you're going to be like a real successful producer or mixer and whatever you want to do behind the glass. But I see you doing really well, and you got a great attitude, and you're a pleasant guy to be around. So I think you'll be super successful. I would say nothing. Believe me, I'm not that guy. Listen, I want to tell everybody where to find you. If you are interested in connecting with Dan for production or to have him play guitar, go to his website. It's danknobler.com, Knobler. Go there, send him an email on his contact page. You have any social media you want to promote? Instagram?
Yeah, I have an Instagram account, but it's not, you know, it's pictures of the dog and guitar.
Pictures of the dog. All right, so go to danknobler.com. And records that you got coming out that you want people to listen to.
Man, I don't know. Whenever that Allison Russell record comes out, it's gonna move you to your core. I just had a record that I produced with the band Denae come out recently.
It's Denae?
Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, records. I mean, there's all I try to keep a good discography on my website.
It's on your website? Great. Go to Dan's website, danknobler, Knobler.com. Check out the music he's doing. Support it. Please listen to it. Send him an email. If you want to talk to him about production and working with your band, please be legit. You know, send him a legitimate letter. You know, don't just say, I love your shit, you know, whatever. Don't waste his time. And thank you, man. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to vet people out. That's the big, you know,
you're right.
I mean, like, you know, it was really funny. This is a long time ago. I've always been like this. It was a blessing and a curse. I was on a phone call, I think, and my wife, who we've been together almost as long as you've been alive. So she's sitting there writing down stuff while I'm on the phone. I'm like, what? And she comes out with this list. And I don't know what made her do it. It was quite funny. Top 10 things that piss Craig off. No, it was so funny. Number 1, waste his time. Number 2, ask him the same question twice. Number 3, waste his time. So it was like 10 things, all variety of like waste his. And it's true, man. I just hate, because you can make more money. You can't make more time.
It's true.
You know, so don't waste Dan's time. Anyway, dude, thank you for everything. I really appreciate it. Hang on a minute. Let me wrap this up. And anything I do to help you, please let me know. And you will be back on this show, man, after you win your Grammy. In fact, the Grammys are just on. We'll do it like 5 years from today. Put it in your calendar, man. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate it. If you enjoyed this show, please share it on your social media channels. Tell all your friends. Thanks a bunch to Dan Knobler. Please support Dan's music. Go to danknobler.com. Support the artist he's producing. And if you want to work with him, hit him up on the contact tab there. And most important, don't forget that happiness is a choice. So choose wisely. Be nice. Go play your guitar and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. Dan, thanks for everything, man.